Hi moms, if you're looking to sell your engagement jewelry, Worthy is the perfect option. With over 45,000 satisfied customers, Worthy is the most trusted name in the business. Would I bring you anything less? Worthy offers competitive auctions and gets you the best deal possible on your jewelry. Plus, I've connected with Worthy on a special bonus offer for the Moms Moving On community. A $100 Amazon gift card when your jewelry sells for over $1,500. Ready to move on from that engagement ring? Get started today at worthy.com/moms. That's worthy.com/moms for the special bonus offer. When do we introduce the kids? I do think we tend to introduce sooner when the kids are really young. True or false?
I would completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've talked about I wanted to know that this person is gonna understand my lifestyle. My kids are always gonna come first, and what it's like to be with someone that has a toddler and a kindergartner. That is important to me, that they kind of saw that dynamic from the beginning, that we get into this deep relationship, and then it's whoa, pump the brakes. Kids aren't for me.
Welcome back to another Moms Moving On. I'm back with my lead coach and number one right-hand lady in the Moms Moving On world, Jess Evans. And we are continuing with our series of talking all about moving on after divorce into a new relationship. How do you do it? How do you find the person? How do you introduce them to your kids? How do you tell your ex-spouse? Oh my God, so many things. And you know what? Even just saying that, Jess, we've done all of those things, and I'm proud of us.
I would agree. But it was nerve-wracking, and no one gave me any tools leading up to it, how to approach it, especially when it comes to telling your ex.
Well, same. So much same. But for anybody who's just joining into this series for the first time, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Jess. I'm a co-parenting mom of two. I have a almost 10-year-old son named Holden and a 7-year-old daughter named Sawyer. And I am in a relationship post-divorce, which was scary, to get back into the dating world after being married for over 10 years. But I'm here and figuring it out as I go.
Well, yeah, but you're doing it really well, which is why you are our lead coach here over at Moms Moving On, because your insight and your experience, coupled with the fact that you are a really conscious, high road taking co-parenting mom, makes such a big difference. And this is what people don't realize. I think when you are going to introduce somebody new to your kids, if you have that secure attachment with them, like I know you have with yours and I have with Bella, it's not going to be as detrimental and scary to them as you might think. It's when they don't feel that safe connection that they will spiral and freak out. That being said, kids are going to have a reaction to this regardless, right? I don't know. Tell me in your experience how that went.
Yeah, I mean, my kids were relatively young when they met my new significant other. And so I think that helped. It wasn't I was dealing with a preteen or a teen that had a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions towards things. They were so young, and we started things so slow that it was just here's my friend, in a sense, they didn't understand a boyfriend girlfriend dynamic at, almost 3 and 5. How do they understand that? So it's here's my friend, and then it just kind of turned into more as months and eventually years went on, that they got more and more comfortable and realized this is mom's new partner. But I made it such a point to them even in the beginning, that your dad is still always going to be your dad, regardless of if there's another man in my life. Dad is always dad.
Yeah, that's so important. I feel like, for those who don't know, the statistics of divorce in second marriages is a lot higher than in first. It's about 65% versus the 50% in first marriages. And the reason for that is because of issues with the kids. In blended families, there's you got to do a very tricky dance of making it all work where the kids feel comfortable and the new partner feels comfortable and everybody's sort of happy and on the same playing field and nobody's like fighting for attention. It's tough. Um, and so in my experience, Bella was 2
Mhm.
when I started dating my now husband. And I, you know, my I would handle it a lot differently now if I were doing this all over again, even with the 2-year-old, because yeah, she didn't know which end was
Right.
up, but she did know there was somebody new there. And, I
Mhm.
said mommy's friend.
Mhm.
Um, but mommy's friend, once we introduced her to him, was around a lot. Not all the time, but he definitely started to become a fixture. And I think I took for granted her age and just because she couldn't understand the relationship that it might not affect her. So, we should talk about a little bit about the effect of new relationships on kids at every age. Like you said, if they're older, they're gonna have a
Right.
much bigger reaction. But I think for younger kids who are adjusting to life post separation, that what you did is huge, is reminding them that just because this person is here and is the same gender as your
Yes.
other parent doesn't mean that they take their place.
Right, and I think sometimes kids at that age where they may not quite understand what's going on, they can also kind of form their own narrative in a sense of like they're living in like almost like a fantasy world in ways, especially like, for my daughter, like she didn't really know her dad and I together for that long. So in her mind, this new guy in my life could be like, well, this is like my new dad at mom's house. Like something like that I didn't want her to have
Yeah.
that, take that, imagination and run with it, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing with that is, so when you meet somebody and you really hate your ex or you're really mad at your ex and your kids take so well to the new person, as the adult, you also live in that fantasy of like, oh my God, we're going to play house and this is going to be great. But you have to be cognizant of the fact that like your children also may really be taking to this person because they're trying to please you. And
Exactly.
then if you start sending the message that like, yes, this person can play your dad or mom or whatever
Mhm.
it's going to be, you're also the underlying message there is that your other parent isn't good enough and that you have to be
Right.
so careful with that.
I agree.
All right. So when do we introduce the kids? I do think we tend to introduce sooner when the kids are really young, true or false?
I would completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've talked about you like I wanted to know that like this person is gonna understand like my lifestyle. Like my kids are always gonna come first and like what it's like to be with someone that has a toddler and a kindergartner. Like that is important to me that they kind of saw that dynamic from the beginning, not that we get into this deep relationship and then it's like, whoa, like pump the brakes. Kids aren't for me.
Yeah. Well, that was important to me too. I think, and I talk about this a lot. So when I met Spencer and I knew that his daughter was 10, she was, at 10 years old, kids are like mostly independent, right? And here was mine in diapers, crawling back into my uterus at all times of day, throwing things, spilling things. Like it was going to be a very different experience for him than from what he was used to. Because I remember him saying, even when I met him, like, I don't even remember the toddler years. It was such a blur. And I'm like, oh God. So I lived in this fear of
Mhm.
like, he's not going to want to handle this. He's going to leave me. And so for me, it was so important to see that he would relate well to her and that I someone would love my child just as much as I did because I never wanted either one of us to feel like a burden. So I did introduce early. That doesn't mean we like all started having family time.
Exactly. Right, right. No, I think like easing into it is so important at any age, toddlers, school age kids, middle school, teen, just really like kind of almost like letting your kids take the lead in a sense of like what they're comfortable with through all of this. And like even when they're younger, like understanding like how they're reacting to things, if they're feeling comfortable in a situation, if they're feeling uncomfortable, just following their cues rather than like forcing this family dynamic the first time that they meet your new partner.
Yeah. And And I think, a lot of parents, good parents, and I've dealt with this on my end where the child is a little bit older and has more negative feelings towards this new person. And then the parent will say, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't proceed. Maybe it was too soon to start dating. I don't think I should do this if my child isn't ready. You also have to remember that just because your child is uncomfortable with it doesn't mean it's a terrible thing. Like
Mhm.
if you do it carefully and slowly, and you are aware of your child's feelings and you help them cope, you can still move very slowly towards a healthy relationship. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Um, I've seen people just want to like throw it all away because the kids weren't ready. And then I remind them that, like, look, they're not ready because they've processed a lot of change. When they're not
Exactly.
ready and they're scared, like, you have to help them through the fear of showing them what's on the other side of that. And children should see their parents in happy, healthy, loving relationships, especially if in the first marriage, things were toxic. You want them to see
Mhm.
the other side of that.
I totally agree.
So when do we introduce? I mean,
I mean, I think, like, I don't
I'm
necessarily
asking
think.
that like laughing because there is no set time in my
Right.
mind.
I feel like when you're confident in your, like, feelings and your relationship, like, whenever that time comes, whether it's, a month or 2 into the relationship or 6 months down the line, I think when you kind of know. You know when you're ready, when you feel confident enough to introduce them. I think also, like, it's important. I know we'll get into, like, telling your ex, but I think it's also important to have that conversation with your new significant other, to get their sense on things too. Like, when are they comfortable meeting your kids?
I also want to point out that if you are not ready to introduce a person and they're insisting on it, I see this as a major red flag.
Yes.
Like, the person that you're dating has to kind of abide by your terms when you're a co-parent, because if you're not ready, there's obviously a lot of reasons for that. Maybe you're in the middle of your legal process and you don't want to make things worse with your ex, or you're really worried about your children. They're really struggling right now. If that person is pushing, this person will undoubtedly be somebody who adds more stress to your life and the relationship every time you choose to put the kids before them.
I
Just saying.
totally agree with that. Yeah. No, I think, that was, like, something that didn't come up in my situation, but friends of mine that have dated post divorce, there was that, like, push of, like, well, when am I going to meet your kids? When am I going to meet your kids? And it's like, if you're not ready, and they need to, like, respect that and, like, have some patience through all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's hard. Listen, it's hard dating somebody who is a co-parent because there
Mhm.
are so many other factors that may come into play before you, and that's the truth.
Yeah.
But I think if you are co-parenting and you date another co-parent, they really understand it more. There's less you have to explain. At least in my situation with Spencer, it was like there was never a question when if we had a date night and his daughter needed him for something at mom's, and or her mom needed him to help with something, like, there was never a question. It was like, please go do that because I
Mhm.
want to be afforded the same respect and the same freedom on my end.
Right. No,
Did
I think.
you did you find like it was because I know your partner is not a co-parent,
Right.
um, did you find there were things that he just, like, didn't understand?
I think in the beginning there was a little bit of that, if there was, like, unexpected travel on dad's end, and I'm like, my first reaction is like, "Yeah, like, bring the kids here." And, like, it took a while for him to kind of gain that confidence in our relationship. I feel that, like, I wasn't, you know, it's not like I'm choosing the kids over him, because it's not really a choice. Like, the kids are always going to come first. And I think he understood that over time, but it definitely was rocky, I would say, in the beginning, just, like, having him understand the dynamic that, like, this isn't a personal attack on you. Like, they're my kids. They're always going to come first.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you give that the children the security of, like, even though this new person is here, you're still top of the
Number
food
one.
chain.
Right.
But something I learned through therapy was, so you do want the kids to feel that they're still number one and super important. However, what's important also for them is to respect that there is sort of like a hierarchy, like the
Mhm.
relationship sometimes has to come first. And if the relationship is okay, everything else in the house is going to be okay. And like I said, it's like a dance, like it's a fine
Mhm.
line between letting your kids run the show and also reminding them that they're still number one. It's tough, man.
It is tough. I know, because you want them to, like, have that security that it, like, you're gonna be their constant regardless, mom's house, dad's house, like, you're always gonna be there for them, but then also not like, you know, like you said, they're running the show, but they
Yeah.
are in a way.
I mean, they are, they always are,
They are.
at least in
Yeah,
our homes.
for
All
sure.
right. So the scariest thing ever,
Mhm.
how and when do you tell your ex?
Mhm.
What are your
So
thoughts?
so I think, again, like, I think so much of that kind of, like, so many factors play into that. One being, like, we've talked about, like, are you still in the legal process? I know, like, depending on what state you live in, like, some divorces, like, even if they're, like, not highly contested, they're, like, completely amicable, can take, like, over a year. So it's like, it's kind of a long time, if you want to start dating and things like that. But, do you really want to, like, stir the pot while you're in the middle of a divorce process? And, like,
Because
it's so that
that's exactly
so
what you
hard.
will be doing, especially if
Mhm.
you were the one to leave the marriage and your ex is still dealing with the feelings of rejection and pain.
Right.
And now all of a sudden you're like, hello, I'm in
Mhm.
love. Like
Uh-huh.
that inevitably will add fuel to the fire and most likely drag on a legal process that doesn't need to be dragged on.
Yes. I think that that's something to consider. In my personal situation, I was so nervous. I don't know why.
Mhm.
Like, I was just like, oh my God, like, he's gonna judge me. He's gonna, like, and we were like, post divorce, but I probably, looking back at it, wish I would have handled it a little differently, because
Same.
my kids were young, so I wanted, like, I was not gonna tell their dad before the kids met him, because I'm like, "Well, what if they meet him and it's, like, a disaster and, like, that's the end?" Like, just for, like, my own pride, I didn't wanna be like, "Oh, I'm introducing the kids to this new guy," and then, like, it didn't work out, and then I have to be like, walk of shame, tell him that, just kidding. Um, so I, like, the kids met my significant other, and then, like, of course, we're like, "Hey, dad!" And I was like, so then we had the conversation after.
Okay.
And if I had to do it all over again, I would totally do it differently. But then it kind of, like, opened, and I had already known that he was dating, not because he had told me, just because, word gets around. Um, but so that kind of helped soften the blow, I think, a little bit on both ends. Like, we knew that the other person was, like, kind of seeing somebody. So then, like, I just had the conversation with him. But I did also, we were not in the place we are today in our co-parenting relationship, but I did want to reassure him that, like, you're never going to be replaced as their dad.
Mhm.
Like, you're always going to be their dad. So I think
I
that was, something that really helped kind of soften the blow.
Yeah, and men really need to hear that. Women really need to hear that. Nobody wants to feel replaced as a parent. It is biologically, threatening when someone else is going to be around your children and, potentially helping them get dressed and cooking them
Yeah.
breakfast and like all those things really tug at your heart. And so that reminder is huge. And where I think I made the mistake was like not allowing my daughter's father to have the negative feelings towards it. I'm like, why do you care? Like,
Mhm.
we're not supposed to be together anyway, and which was so wrong of me. And I don't know that I placed enough emphasis on those reminders.
Right.
Granted, like my attitude has always been, I didn't have a good relationship with my dad. Nobody fostered that for me. My dad never took the initiative. And all I want for Bella is to have a great relationship with her dad. I married him knowing, if nothing else, this guy's going to be an amazing dad. And so I wouldn't have wanted anybody to come in between. But I don't want to share more details about my own personal life. What I want to share are some very important things to remember. When you do make the decision to share this with your ex, you have to go based off the dynamic of the relationship you already have. If you are
Right.
conversational and you are amicable, then you want to have this in an amicable conversation. You don't want to send a text that's like, "Hey, by the way,
Mhm.
new dude John coming through." Like you don't want to do that. If you are high conflict and you're in the middle of a contentious legal battle and you are scared of this person's response, you need to think about three things. Is this the right time for this person to hear the news? Is this the right time for me to share this news? And is this the right time for the kids? Because if things are already high conflict and tense, your kids feel it, then you introduce somebody else, then there's more they have to be stressed out about. So think of those things. But when you do make the decision to tell somebody and you are nervous and you're worried about their response and you don't have an amicable relationship, it has to be very matter of fact. BIF, brief, informative,
Yeah.
firm, and friendly. Put it in an email or a text. Just wanted to let you know, you're giving them the consideration. You are declaring, you are not asking. You don't need anybody's permission. And you have to stick by that. And you also have to be prepared to deal with whatever the feelings that come up for this person are. And just
Mhm.
because they're unhappy with it, or just because they're harassing you about it, it doesn't mean that they're terrible people. It means they're having a really hard time dealing with their feelings, and you have to allow the space for that.
I agree. I think,
Um,
even if you're in like a good place too, I think, opening up that conversation if they're willing to have it. But if the conversation's too hard for the other, for your ex to have, then maybe you do just keep it like very brief. Like, there's this new person, you know, this is like, we've been dating for however long, whatever you want to say to them. And then just kind of like keep it at that. And then see kind of where that goes.
yeah. Listen, there's no one way to skin this dating after divorce cat. It's all a lot of trial and error.
I totally agree.
And we've done it. We've erred and we've trialed.
I've definitely erred a lot. But like I think that that's like how you learn, how you grow, and how you can help other people. Everyone's situation is going to be different, but like if people can learn from the mistakes I made, I'm all for it.
Yeah. And if you're sitting here listening to this and you're like on the other end of it where you're not dating somebody new, but your ex is, a
Mhm.
reminder for you that you are still their primary parent and their number one. Nobody coming into the mix can change that really, even
Right.
if it feels so temporarily because there's like a shiny new toy there and it's exciting. That wears off. Trust me.
Yes. I think I mean, that is something that I know we'll get into on one of the episodes in the series, but that was challenging. Like, I mean, we both can relate to our exes having a new significant other, regardless of your relationship status. It's emotional, to say the
Yeah,
least.
it really is. It really is. But we will get to that and so many other good things.
Yeah.
What else should we tell the people today, Jess?
I mean, I think just like we kind of talked about, just like trusting yourself, which that's why I do think learning about yourself before you get back into the dating world is so important. Because if you're going to trust yourself, then you're going to be able to know when the time is right to introduce your kids to your significant other. But I do like we've talked about, our kids were a lot younger. I do think it's important if you do have like older kids to have that open dialogue, have that open conversation with them leading up to it, after the initial meet, and then kind of, throughout the relationship.
And I'll say, if I had to share one tip, like one major tip about introducing your kids to this new person or introducing this new person to your kids, it's ask yourself the why behind the intent. If it is not, like we said, to see the dynamic
Yeah.
and make sure everything flows naturally, if it is because in your mind you want to recreate a family for your children, you want to um have a traditional, two parent house for them and
Hmm.
you think that playing house is the only way that they're going to be okay, then you're not ready. That is not the reason why. Children do not need a two parent dynamic to be okay. You do not need to recreate a family dynamic for them to be okay. What they need is you, a strong attachment to you and you being okay first. So consider that if nothing else.
I totally think that's the best advice you could give someone.
Well, thanks, Jess.
You're so welcome.
I like podcasting with you.
I love this. This is fun.
I can't wait for the next one. What are we talking about on the next one?
Well, I think on the next one, we're going to talk about if and when you move in together and how to approach that,
Yeah. Ooh,
which is
been
a
there,
lot.
done that.
Yes.
I went there and did that just before the pandemic. And then we were all locked
Perfect
down
timing.
together.
Then you
And
got
like,
really close and you
yeah,
just,
it was all rainbows and butterflies, let me tell you. You guys will just
uh-huh.
have to stick around and come back for the next one to hear about it. Thank you so much for listening. If you have questions about dating after divorce, blending a family, moving on, you know where to send them. info@momsmovingon.com. Check out Jess on the gram, MMO Coach Jess. Follow me, do all the things. We'll see you next time on Moms Moving On.
Thank you.